Welcome back to Cinema Flicks Music Picks. I'm Davey, your host with the most, the beast with the least. The least I can do today is continue on with our album series. On the joint number 6 in the year that was 2022, we have Low Key by Brendo Benson, which, as you'll note here from the hype sticker, limited edition 180 gram audio file, which I hate that so much. I hate that. Stick audio file on it. The vinyl community idiots will lap it up. It says audio file, it must be a masterpiece. What is interesting about Brendo Benson for me is the fact that somehow he's turned into a 52-year-old man and I've not noticed. I still think of him as being quite young. Guess that's how time plays tricks. Because in my mind I was like, he can't be that old when I looked it up. And then I thought, well, I've been listening to him for 20 years. Because I got into Brendo Benson with his first solo album, which was from 1996, but re-released in 2003 with an EP stuck on the end of it. Because it kind of was out of place in 96, but in 2003, much more zeitgeisty. And then Uncut Magazine started heralding him as, one of the greats of new power pop and blah blah blah. And then Alternative to Love came out in 2005, masterpiece. And 2008 he joined up with Jack White, formed the Raconteurs, made that phenomenal album, and made a couple since. He's continued to work on his own projects, so Brendon, and everything's been relatively low key, if you will. He's not a household name, and he's always just the other guy in the Raconteurs to more casual fans, if they even know him. 2020, I'm sure we all remember what happened then. Some of us more than others. Brendon, like the rest of us, trapped in the house during lockdown, and decides, okay, I still want to make an album, because it did in 2020 and wanted to do another one for 2021. I'm still going to do an album. This is a good excuse for me to do it all myself, do a McCartney and play all the instruments myself, but not be lazy and just do, I play all the instruments myself, but then it's just acoustic guitar and a little bit of really tiddly piano. I've heard a few of them. Oh, he plays all the instruments himself, and you think, what, 3 chords on a guitar, and bit of noodling on the piano, and that's you. All of a sudden, Stevie Wonder or Prince, Brian Wilson? No. However, Brendon decided that he would avoid that consciously, and wanted to make it sound like, although it was just him, it was a full band. So he did that rather wonderfully by making a band of Brendo Bensons, and that's illustrated best in, first of all, here's your album cover, but in the gatefold, look at that, with Brendon all over the place, lots of Brendo Bensons, playing all the instruments, doing everything. So he writes almost everything here, with a notable exception. He produced it himself, although there was a second producer who came on just to kind of sharpen it towards the end. And he obviously sings everything himself. But again, he wanted it to sound like, okay, I don't want it to sound like an amateur just doing his best, on one of these kind of vanity projects. So he blood, sweat and tears it out, where he didn't just double track things, he quadruple tracked and 50 tracked, and if something didn't sound right, he just kept going and going and going. If he wasn't proficient enough on an instrument, he played it until his fingers bled. He kept just pushing himself, pushing his boundaries, pushing his sounds, and ended up with Low Key. Now, some people have criticised this for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think reasonably fairly, there's no CD of it, and even the vinyl limited edition, but I think that's just market factors, to be honest. If there's no demand for a CD from certain artists these days, and there's no demand. the other kind of criticism is that it's only 8 tracks, but I think when, as I said, Brendan's pushed himself so hard to make sure that he's developed skills to make these into big enough tracks that sound like it's not just Brendan Benson playing, even though it is. I think we can let him away with that, because he's put more into this music, even though it's less than half an hour, it's about 29 minutes. He's put more into this than most artists do for a double album with 50 musicians, an orchestra and a string section, because he had to do it all himself and try and sound natural and organic and not like it's just a vanity project where he does it all himself. Which would be fair enough if the music wasn't interesting at the same time, but it is. You get Ain't No Good, which starts us off with classic Brendan Benson kind of power pop stuff, but with a beat to it. Ain't no good gonna come of it, ain't no good. And we go into I Miss the Plane, which is a very Ray Davies like, or even a bit Beatlesy. It could come off a Rubber Soul. I mean, I don't want to be too hyperbolic about these things, but if it was a Kinks song, it would be like This Time Tomorrow, It's in that kind of ballpark. And then People Grow Apart is one of his best kind of rockers, where things just build and build and build and build, and people grow apart. It's the chorus is infectious, and it's one of those ones that repeats over and over ad nauseum to get stuck in your head and becomes a real earworm. And you get a cover version of Jerry Rafferty's Right Down the Line, which is, I quite liked hearing that here, because the lockdown, Brendan Benson spent a lot of it doing requests just from fans saying, do you want me to just strum a song and see if I can pick it up? And that was part of helping him develop his skills, see if he could learn chords that he hadn't picked up before, all that kind of thing. So it was actually an exercise for him and a way to keep his fan base entertained during lockdown, which is lovely. So him doing a cover of Jerry Rafferty is, first of all, a lovely tribute to one of Scotland's finest, but secondly, a nice callback to when this album was conceived, because he was doing covers in that era. A Whole Lot of Nothing, Whatever's on My Mind, just gorgeous stuff. And Brendan Benson, classic power pop, singer, songwriter, a little bit of soul. I mean, he plays a little bit of trumpet in here. There's a little bit of trumpet. I mean, it's you're not going to mistake him for one of the jazz greats all of a sudden, but he's picked it up to say, wonder if I could try that, and then got good enough that, hey, it worked. I mean, he's not trying anything way out of an amateur's comfort range, but he's worked on it enough that the trumpet sounds that need to be on this record sound like they deserve to be on this record. You're not thinking, oh God, who let the 5-year-old in? He's just a ridiculously accomplished musician, and yeah, bless you, Brendan. So much more than just the other guy in the raconteurs. And because it's audiophile vinyl, it comes in a nice polyline sleeve, and it's on She Wore Blue vinyl, which is kind of blue, slightly marbled. You won't be able to pick that up there, but it is slightly marbled. Yeah, so it's only 8 tracks, less than half an hour. Infectious, classic power pop, indie greatness, from one of the masters who, in his 50s, sounds exactly as good, well, no, better than he was in his 30s, but he doesn't sound like a man in his 50s. So, yeah, bless you, Brendan Benson. Always sail with you. So, actually, I didn't really think about that, but I covered Jack White earlier in this week, and so I've covered both main members of the raconteurs. Well, it's a bit weird. Maybe it's subliminal. Anyways, well recommended. Again, unfortunately, there's no CD, so don't go looking for one, but go onto your streaming services, buy it. I mean, if you've can get the vinyl. It's quite cheap. It's less than 20 quid. Or buy the digital version. It's well worth it. Really is well worth it. But mostly, stay very safe out there, right? Love and mercy, my dears. Love and mercy.